Okay, fine. Today our topic is DTP, and DTP stands for Dynamic Trunking Protocol. So it is also trunking only. So we know we have like two types of modes. We have, it means two types of ports we have. One is access port and another one is trunk port. So as we discussed earlier, where we'll configure the trunk port and where we'll configure the access port. Can anyone answer? Where we'll configure the trunk port and where we'll configure the access port, and what is the use for the access port and what are the uses for the trunk port? Anyone can? What is trunk port and what is access port? Let's go ahead. What is trunk port and what is access port?
What is access port which connects the regular devices to the network. The trunk ports connect in between the switches or routers.
Okay. Apart from that,
access port carries single VLAN information and trunk port carries multiple VLAN information.
good. And apart from that, anyone have any other answers? Okay, fine. Where will configure the trunk port? In between PC to switch, right? Because here we'll configure access port.
No. No, it's the other way around.
No. Switch
No.
to PCs is like access port and the switch to router is trunk.
Here, this one is trunk and this one is access,
Yeah.
you mean to say, right?
Mm.
Okay, fine.
Yes.
Good. Then why you only here trunk port and the why you only here why I have to configure here access here only? Here only trunk. This one is why I should have to configure any between PC to switch. Why here only, and what is the reason behind here trunk port?
Here you will be having only like single VLANs in between PC and switch.
Okay, it's a single VLAN. So because of single VLAN, we are configuring
Access port.
yeah. And here we have like multiple, like one more VLAN. This one is 10, I believe. This one is 20. And so here we have 30, like more VLANs we have. So this VLAN, again, here we have different VLAN. So this VLANs wants to communicate on another switch VLANs, like another different access switch VLANs. So that time we have to configure. So here we have a multiple VLAN. Here we have a more than two VLANs, more than one VLAN, more than. So that time we'll use more than VLANs. We have more than one or more than one VLAN. So that time we'll configure any count. It will be more than means number of VLANs up to 1006 or 4096 to the range will finish. So that time we'll configure in between trunk. So here we have two types of configuration for trunk part. One is for static, what we discussed static earlier, that is static trunk. And second part is dynamic. Here today what we are doing, dynamic trunk. That is what DTP, Dynamic Trunking Protocol. Dynamic trunk. So first one is static. Just will configure like I'll show you basic configuration. How we'll configure static configuration. So I'll open for that static configuration. I'll show you and we'll discuss dynamic then. So I have taken two switches and this is you can assume like this is a core switches and core switches is connected to again access switches. So with connectivity, how we'll configure statically trunk. First we'll discuss, then we'll move to the dynamic. Yesterday, how I established the static trunk. Now tell me the commands. Yesterday, what we did. How we enable the static trunk. No. And enable. So first config terminal. We'll move to the configuration mode. Global configuration. Then select the interface. Interface fast Ethernet 0/2. Which interface? Whichever the in between the two multi-layer switches. So here we'll use trunk encapsulation. So by default, I'll show you something. Before that, show interface fast Ethernet 0/2. I'm audible. Switch port mode. So this is the command. We can check. Hey guys, I'm audible or not?
Yes, you are audible.
Thank you for confirming. So this is the command where we'll check the negotiation is done or not. So I'll explain each and every line. Before that, I'll show you something. So yesterday, what we did before this command explanation, I'll show you for establishing the trunk config terminal interface fast Ethernet 0/2. And if I want to enable the trunk switch port, then mode trunk. If I'll use this command, it won't take. When the negotiation is auto here, it means the negotiation is farming. That is what trunk is enabled by default. DTP, it's a Cisco proprietary protocol. DTP is a Cisco proprietary protocol. So by default, DTP mode is auto, is enabled. Auto mode is enabled. It is trying to establish a trunking. It is trying to establish a trunking. So for that, we have to disable. So we have to disable means I have to use first command switch port trunk encapsulation, whichever .1q or ISL. Two types of trunk encapsulation methods we have, .1q or ISL. So Cisco packet tracer, here we will get the only .1q. So ISL is a Cisco proprietary again. So here you can check only .1q we are getting. So once we enable, so negotiation is off now. Negotiation is closed. They are not establishing through negotiation. So that is what here you can check the negotiation. If you want to say like this also, switch port negotiation. So this command is not working. Switch port no negotiation. Sorry. So this is the command. If you use this command also, it will be conflict between negotiation and dynamic desirable. It is not accepting. But if you want to close in real time, this is the command no negotiation. So what I mean to say is by default DTP is enabled and DTP is a Cisco proprietary protocol, and you can see this DTP protocol in Cisco switches only, not other vendors. So DTP, it is a Cisco proprietary protocol and it is a L2 protocol, layer 2 protocol. So whenever we are discussing trunking or access ports or trunk ports, those are the L2 protocols only. So this is a data link layer protocol. DTP, it is a data link layer protocol and it is a Cisco proprietary protocol. You cannot see in other vendors like Aruba, HP, Palo Alto, this kind of switches, you cannot find out this DTP protocol. So by default, DTP is on auto mode. DTP is auto mode. Auto means it is negotiation. It is starting with negotiation. I am saying that negotiation means one side you enable DD, dynamic desirable. I'll explain this DD. Just I'm giving the overview. What is the requirement for the DTP? So one side is DD and another one side is DA. DA means dynamic auto. This is what dynamic auto. Here we'll write DA. This is dynamic auto. Another one side is I'll use DD, dynamic desirable. So it is starting to negotiation. It is starting to negotiation will form the trunk. This switch is telling I am DD, dynamic desirable. Can we negotiate? Can we form the trunk? He's asking this route switch 2 is asking to switch 1. Can we negotiate and will form the trunk? So this message is giving yes, we can. Why we not? Because this is DA and this one is a DD. But by default, these both are in DA. By default, both switches are in DA. That time, no negotiation. So interface trunk. We cannot find out the trunk. Once you enable trunk at one switch only. So I'll enable. Now you can check. So interface fast Ethernet 0/0, 0/2, sorry. So I have used this command earlier. So once you enable this command, the negotiation is done. Then use this command trunk, interface, switch port mode trunk. Once the ports will be down, then ports will be up. Automatically it will be changes to status is down, then it will become to up. Once it will be take the STP, because of STP it will be take 30 seconds. Show spanning tree. We'll discuss later on this STP protocol also. But the STP, it's loop avoidance protocol. We'll check what it will be happen. Now, once we enable, statically we enabled the trunking. This is a static command. So as I mentioned, two types of trunking we have. One is static, another one is dynamic. Dynamic is by default enabled. So by default enable, in that also mode is DA, dynamic auto mode. I'll explain each and every mode. Just I am showing the protocol is enabled by default or not. I'll show you. Show interface trunk. Yes, you can verify. Sorry. Show interface trunk. With this command, will verify the trunk is established or not. You can verify here. One side is on. Just on means statically I enabled the trunking. If you enable dynamic auto or dynamic desirable, here you can check the neighbor switch. So this is the neighbor switch. I haven't configured till yet. So here you can check enable show interface trunk. With this command will verify the trunk. So you can check here mode. So here we have three types of mode, mostly three types of mode in the dynamic desirable, dynamic auto, dynamic one more method is on. So this is statically we did, and dynamically we have auto mode and desirable mode. Two modes we have. By default mode is auto. If you want to enable dynamic desirable mode, config T interface fast Ethernet 0/2 and switch port mode is dynamic desirable. If you enable this mode, so it will be take 30 seconds. Wait while. So show interface trunk. So you can here you can check. The negotiation is done by DTP with the DTP. With this command, we can verify it. N, if whenever you have seen here, N means negotiation formed. Here you cannot find out the N. So here you cannot find out the N. N means negotiation in between. How we can verify? Show interface fast Ethernet 0/2 and switch port mode. With this command, we can verify. Here you can check negotiation is formed in between. So mode is dynamic desirable. and switch port mode is enabled, and in between trunk mode is trunk. And two types port only we have. One is access port and another one is trunk port. Either it will be access port, either it will be trunk port. No third port we don't have. Any third port we have. Either it will be trunk, either it will be access. Access, it means it will be carry single VLAN information. Either if you see here, trunk means trunk will be carry multiple VLAN information. In between switches, in between routers, in between router to switch will use trunk. In between router to switch, server to switch also will use trunk. So whenever you have seen here PC, it means always that is access port only. It means it's a access port only. So here, if you enable for this port as a dynamic desirable also, no, it won't form the trunking in between whenever you have seen these PCs to connectivity. So if you show interface fast Ethernet 0/2 and switch port mode, I have seen this port in between. So here you can check dynamic auto, but operation trunking encapsulation native, that is leave it. And if you enable in between trunk also, if you want to trunk configure interface fast Ethernet 0/2 and switch port trunk, and if you enable dynamic desirable also, so no use. If you enable show interface trunk, trunk will be not found if you use in between this command also. So we'll discuss what is dynamic desirable modes and we'll discuss entire thing. Before that, you cannot see in between this PC2 switch, the port always access only. Either we have two types of ports, either it will be access port, either it will be trunk port. So now move forward. So here we have to check your entire configuration part. So this is the what? So fast Ethernet 0/2. This is the port and the name is this one, and enabled switch port mode enabled, and administrator mode and operation mode. Operation mode means either it will be operation, it will be established once we enable trunk, means the trunk port here in between trunk. Either if you are not, it will be used like in this between. So that is what access port. Operation mode, either it will be trunk, either it will be access. So administrative trunk encapsulation .1q by default in Cisco switches, two modes we have. One is ISL and another one is .1q. By default, .1q is working here. And operation trunking encapsulation and negotiation is on. But because why it is showing on means we configured here dynamic trunk established with static mode. So now we'll discuss. I am taking here two switches. So connectivity in between trunk establish how it will be, we'll discuss. So when trunk will form, when no trunk. So here we'll discuss trunk, when it will be formed and when it will be not formed. So by default mode is DA, dynamic auto, both end. DA, dynamic auto. So here no trunk. So the result is access port. The result no trunk means that is access port only. Here no trunk. Trunk will be not formed. So just now we discussed, like so by default you can check again. I am taking two switches. New switches I have taken, and connectivity by default which mode is available, we'll check now. Check here, enable. show interface fast Ethernet 0/1 switch port mode. So you can check which mode is there. Dynamic auto. Just now I have mentioned this mode is dynamic auto. Both are in dynamic auto, dynamic auto. Here also, and this one is also dynamic auto. So trunk is not formed in between. Dynamic auto, dynamic auto. If you want to verify, yes, you can verify with this command. Show interface trunk. Chalo, we'll verify now. So dynamic auto. Show interface trunk. Trunk is not formed in between. Trunk is not formed. So that mode is, now we can assume this mode is access. The mode is access. If trunk is not established, that mode is access mode. So for that, no trunk in between form. So if I'll configure here D dynamic desirable, and here also dynamic desirable. This is the one scenario, and this is the one scenario. No trunk established. One side is dynamic desirable and another side is dynamic auto. I am not changing here. Only one switch I am changing. Only one switch configuration I try to change. This one is dynamic auto only still. This is a second scenario. So in between, trunk will be formed. Trunk will be formed. Trunk will be established. Okay. In this only single case, only no trunk. Apart from that, here if you configure, this one is DD, dynamic desirable, and this one is DD, dynamic desirable. Trunk will be formed. Trunk will be formed. If here you use on mode, statically we did, and by default here DA, dynamic auto, then also trunk will be formed. On statically we configured. So this is a second scenario, third scenario, and this is a fourth scenario. Here also trunk will be formed. Understood? So basically DTP, it's a Cisco proprietary protocol, and so here you can check the DTP timer also with this command. Show DTP. So DTP sender hello packets every 10 seconds, and dead timer is 300 seconds. It means 500 seconds. It will still wait. This is the timers. So all the switches, you can verify all the switches by default DTP is enabled. Interface fast Ethernet 0/1 and switch port mode. These all are the DTP. You can check all are the dynamic auto mode only. So I have configured, I haven't configured anything. So still, so interface trunk is not formed in between. You can verify it. So I'll configure this switches are the DA. Sorry, this switch is here DD, dynamic desirable. DD, and this switch is by default DA. I'll still leave like that only, DA, dynamic auto. So final, it will be formed trunk or not, will check.
Yeah, Alim, you're not able to hear you. Like, I think getting some disturbances. Not the disturbance, like from the lagging of your voice when you're talking.
Okay. Now can you verify? I'm audible or not?
Yeah, you're audible only, but your voice is like lagging. Yeah, it's breaking up in the between.
So now it is fine or not?
Yes, now it's got.
Yeah, I mean, when you're continuously speaking, sometimes it's just breaking down, not like a.
Okay, sorry for that inconvenience. So I'll will discuss. No issue. So here, what we are discussing, the DTP protocol. In this DTP protocol, we have a different modes. So in that mode, first mode is dynamic auto mode. It is by default enabled. By default enabled mode is dynamic auto. It means trunk is not established. In between, trunk will not form. So trunk is not formed in between. So first mode is dynamic auto. You can check with this command. Show interface fast Ethernet 0/1 switch port mode. Switch port. With this command, we can verify it. So you can check DA. So no trunk is formed. Show interface trunk. So once so this is what trunk is not established. But if you want to establish trunk with using dynamic desirable or with the help of DTP mode, DTP. So dynamic trunking protocol. So here we have to change the mode is here dynamic auto to dynamic desirable. Once, so if you enable dynamic,
now it is breaking up, Ali.
Breaking.
Yeah,
okay, fine.
when you're
Can you
talking
give me 5
continuously,
minutes?
it is breaking up. Yeah, okay. No worries.
So continue the session. So as we discuss DTP, Cisco proprietary protocol, and as Cisco devices, DTP is enabled. The mode is auto, in auto mode. So here we have modes like dynamic auto and dynamic desirable and dynamic on mode. On. When we configure statically, that mode is on. So when the DA is there, dynamic auto, no trunk established in between, and dynamic desirable one side and dynamic auto in neighbor switch. So the trunk will be established in between. And one side is DD and another one side also DD. Though that time also the trunk will be established in between. And one side is on, statically we enable trunking, and another side is dynamic auto by default mode. That time also trunk will be established. So this is all about the trunk, and we'll see some documentation here. So trunking can be done dynamically through negotiation process. That is what negotiation process. When the dynamic auto mode or dynamic desirable, they are trying to negotiate. Shall we start? Shall we do trunking? Will we establish trunk? So likewise. So here we have two types of mode as we discussed: dynamic desirable and dynamic auto. And desirable to become trunk, always wants to become trunk. Yeah, whenever we configure dynamic desirable, I'll show you in lab how we'll configure it. Dynamic desirable, it will be forming the trunk. It will be start process to establish a trunk in between switches. So once trunk will be established, then we know the multiple VLANs will be carry on that port. Otherwise, it won't carry if you haven't configured the trunk in between switches. So they won't carry the multiple VLAN information. So send and reply to DTP messages. So once we configured like DA, DD, dynamic desirable, so that time only they will send DTP messages. So it becomes a trunk if the port on the other switch is set on trunk. If you set trunk also, that is what on mode. We established on mode means statically we enable the trunk, and other port is dynamic desirable, and another one is dynamic auto mode. Here we have three types of modes, and another one is dynamic. What is dynamic auto mode? Only reply to DTP messages. Only it will be give the reply to the messages only. Once it will be receive the DTP messages, means I'll show you here. We'll use debug command. Debug and debug command is not working here. Debug to custom EAGRP, E4, frame delay, IP, IPv4, and TP, PP. So debug command is not working, and support is not there. No issue. They try to send the debug. It means they are trying to establish message through messages. They'll farm the trunking. Likewise, the debug command will verify. No, it is not working here. No issue. So auto mode, only reply will be happen. So default mode is on. Default mode. This one is the default mode, and all the modern switches. And it becomes a trunk if the other end is set trunk as dynamic, we enable statically trunk, otherwise we enable dynamic desirable mode. So it will be between trunk will be formed. So here, as we discuss here, trunk will be configured as a manually. So that time also the port still negotiate trunking will with their port on the other end of the link. So access port, as we know, it will be carry single VLAN information and configure access manually. The port is user port. It is user port and single VLAN information for will use this. And if you want to disable trunk, disable the DTP mode. So use no negotiation command. If you use this no negotiation means the trunk will be not formed if you are using the desirable port also. So manually we have to configure. So dynamic port, dynamic DTP messages also disabled and all. So the port is switch port, no negotiation. With this command, we can disable the trunk, disable the process of trunking process. We can disable interface. So interface fast Ethernet 0/1 and switch port, no negotiation. With this command, we can disable it. With this command, you want can check. Before that, we have to turn off the we have to configure statically. Then only the command will be formed. It will be work. Otherwise, it won't work. So we have to establish. So it means if you are disabling this command, why it is not working means the in between trunk is not formed. So that is the reason. Once you establish a trunk in between, then use this command. Otherwise, it won't work. So in between switches, as we know, as we discussed, trunk port only in between switches. So that is what. So likewise, so DTP, we can check the DTP messages under with this command. Global DTP information, sending DTP hello packets every 10 seconds, and dynamic trunking timeout is 300 seconds. The timeout time is 300 seconds means 5 minutes. Zero interfaces using DTP. So no messages are formed in between. So that time this command is working. Low. So we can check here. Show DTP. Show DTP. So here two interfaces we are using. Two interfaces, but no DTP messages because no trunk form. Show interface trunk. So no trunk is formed. So here the clear picture is there when the trunk will be access, when trunk port and when access port will be established. So one side is DA and another side also DA. Here you can check. So entire thing is there. So one switch one, and this one is like it says switch 1 and switch 2. So first and 2. Here DA and DA. So no, it is no trunk. So port is the operation mode is access. So the operation mode is access. One side is DD and another side is DA. So here you can check the trunk will be established. One side is trunk we configured manually and another side is trunk. So the trunk will be formed in between. The mode is the trunk. So one side is access and another side also access. The mode is access only. So either the port is access, either the port is trunk. The final goal is we should have access, either it will be trunk. So likewise, the DTP will work. So here you can verify the commands which we are using. Interface fast Ethernet, and you can use the switch port mode dynamic desirable or dynamic auto. With these commands we can use. Auto means
Lim,
set trunking
we
mode.
can see only the Word document. We're not able to see your lab.
Yes, we can see. I have shown right in this.
No,
So
no, we can
what
see
Raj?
only the Word document. Only the dynamic auto and dynamic desirable. We are not able to see your lab. I think you're showing the
Okay,
lab.
No, I'm not showing in lab. I'm not showing. I'm
Okay.
still I'm in document.
Oh,
Still
okay.
I am in
Okay,
document
no,
only.
okay, no worries.
So this is the port. I am showing it the configuration part here only. So here you can check the first we have to select a switch and that interface, which interface we have to, where we'll configure mostly trunk or access for particular interface only in between. So whichever the interfaces in between will configure likewise only. So switch port mode, dynamic auto or dynamic desirable. Dynamic auto is already, it will be is there. So that is the reason. So desirable we have to configure. So I'm opening now lab. Here I'll show you. So how we have to configure it, entire thing. Now my lab is open. It is visible or not? Can you verify it?
It's not visible.
Access switches are connected like first Ethernet 0/1 and connected like this. Here you can check now. I'll switch on this PLI mode. Now configuration mode. So first we'll verify which mode the switch is available now. Show interface fast Ethernet 0/1. So here you can check switch port mode. Sorry, entire thing we have to switch port mode. With this command, the trunk is established or which the mode is in which administrative mode. We can verify it. Here we have two types of modes in that administrative mode and operation mode. Operation mode is static access. So access port, the port is here you can verify with this statically access. So the port is access port. We have to enable trunk. So just configuration part, dynamic auto is both switches dynamic auto only. So that is the reason trunk is not established. So here the port is, this port is dynamic auto and this port also dynamic auto. So that is the reason no trunk is established in between. No trunk. You can verify with this command. Show interface trunk. So what I am doing now, one side I'll use dynamic desirable command. So how will use config terminal interface fast Ethernet 0/1 and switch port mode dynamic desirable with this command. And if you want to check more modes, here you can check either access, either dynamic desirable. Access you can check if the port is access means, as we know, the port is carry the single VLAN information. So we don't want, we need the trunk port. So dynamic desirable, dynamically we are giving the dynamic and you just give the question mark means here we have two modes again. One is auto mode and another one is desirable. So if you configure desirable, then only trunk will be established. So desirable I am using now. So any question mark? No, nothing. So once the port will be down and it will be up. Now you can verify it. The port mode is dynamic, desirable, and one side is this one. This side is dynamic auto mode, and the neighbor mode is dynamic desirable. So here trunk will be established. Trunk will be established. Here no trunk. No trunk means access. This port is access. So first port is access. Now we are verifying the trunk. Show interface trunk. Now you can check. The trunk is established through negotiation process. Trunking is established with desirable command. If you enable through manually also, trunk will be established. This is all about the DTP protocol. Guys, if you have any questions in DTP, we'll discuss. This is all about the DTP.